Everyone, coming to you again with another Disney versus original work, and unfortunately I had to skip Winnie the Pooh after Tangled because according to my research, the Winnie the Pooh film that came out in 2011, I believe, was inspired by the tales of the author who wrote Winnie the Pooh, because I did do Disney versus original work of the 60s version of Winnie the Pooh. And I don't mean like 1960, but it was done within the 1960s. I just can't remember exactly the date. But that was based on certain stories that the author of Winnie the Pooh created. But unfortunately, the remake is just sort of inspiration and not necessarily drawing from a particular source material. So I felt that I couldn't really review it. And it was really hard to find any research regarding Winnie the Pooh as to what exactly it was based on, and I guess from what I could tell, they just used sort of the kinds of tales that the author, I guess, would be inspired by. Like, they're fairly like innocent and simple. Like, for example, one of the stories I believe is like Eeyore loses his tail, so it's kind of drawing inspiration, I think, from the original work, but not directly using it as a source material. So I had to skip that. And so, hence, we have the latest Disney film, Wreck-It Ralph, again, not based on original source work, but we have, instead, Frozen. Yes, Frozen. And I have to say, out of all the Disney versus original works that I've done, this is probably the most loosely based Disney versus original work I have ever seen. Like, really loosely. It has a similar kind of setup, I'll at least give it that, but it's really different. There's a lot of different characters that Disney seems to draw certain, I think, aspects and inspiration from it. But I'm basically going to try to describe to you the original work and kind of give you a sense of what the original work was doing, in particular Hans Christian Andersen, since that's what the Snow Queen is by. So we start off with this hobo goblin within the original work, and this, unlike the Disney work that just has, I believe they're just like trolls or something, I'm not sure, but they do something completely different within the Disney work, which I'll explain. But with the hobo goblin, who's sort of like a demon, I guess, he makes this mirror, and this mirror makes all the good stuff shrink into nothing, and makes all the bad stuff even more profound and increase in size and make worse. And so he kind of fiddles around with people with this particular mirror, and then people look in the mirror and they go, ah, and, freak out, and to him it's funny and amusing. So we have this mirror that he creates, and I'll explain how this sort of relates to the plot later on. But basically it starts out with these two children, Kay, who's the boy, and Gerda, who's the girl. And Hans Christian Andersen kind of sets up this sort of love for nature. It seems like he's really not a winter person. And I only say that because, within all the other seasons there's always stuff blooming and there's always a lot of animals around. But winter's really the only time of year where you don't see like a lot of animals and such, because, a lot of them are hibernating and a lot of them are keeping warm for the winter. So he really does emphasize this sort of beauty of nature, and you'll see how Kay and Gerda really love the flowers and the sort of beauty and innocence of nature. And there is this reference to the Snow Queen in the original work, and there's also a grandma too, which should be noted. I can't really remember exactly if it's Kay's grandma or Gerda's grandma, because it's emphasized that they're not related. So I can't exactly remember, but she's in this fairly briefly, even not at all for the most part, and it is emphasized that she likes sort of telling these kinds of tales, and there is this mention of the Snow Queen, and even Kay, I think, says at one point like something like, yeah, I'll just melt her, you know. So I think there is this almost this lack of light, or this inability to, I guess, appreciate winter. I mean, Hans Christian Andersen kind of paints winter as like this grim thing, and I was almost drawing like really Narnia references here, because I feel like this story is actually a lot closer to Narnia than it is to Frozen. But I will try to draw some comparisons once they come up, because there are a couple. But basically, Kay ends up encountering the Snow Queen, and she uses, I guess, these pieces of the mirror to put inside of him. Now again, this is really weird fairy tale logic territory here, so you're kind of just gonna have to go with it. But basically, she puts like, guess, little pieces of this mirror that the Hobo Goblin created inside of him, I guess. One's inside his heart, I believe. I want to say it's heart and eye. Yeah, she puts it in his eye, so what he sees is bad and looks horrible. And then she puts it, I guess, within his heart, so it makes him like a cold person. I'm not sure, but that's kind of how it explains it, because he encounters the Snow Queen and she kind of puts this thing on him, and I guess he just kind of shrugs it off, this encounter, and basically what ends up happening is just that he starts to change, and Gerda notices this. Like, he looks at the flowers and he's like all freaked out, like, oh no, these are ugly, and getting all freaked out and scared. But he decides one day to go on sort of a sleigh ride, and as he does, he gets lost, and there's a storm, and then basically that's when he gets taken by the Snow Queen, and the Snow Queen kind of says, he kind of goes willingly, and I almost want to say this is to the point where I guess the curse that's been put upon him, like the glass, is really, I guess, impacting his psyche, so he ultimately is like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll go with you. And she basically takes him to where her castle is, and kind of is like, he's kind of like the prisoner throughout the entire story. But basically, this really creeps out, really scares Gerda, because she is so close to Kay. It is really emphasized that these two are like, that even though they're not related by blood, they're still kind of, they still kind of love each other in this way. I really don't know if it's intended to be romantic or not. It almost feels like it. I mean, I just like look at this and go, I don't know what else to think like of this relationship. It just doesn't come off as a friend. At least to me, it doesn't, but I think it's just open to interpretation. You can say whatever you want, but it kind of just comes off a lot stronger, I feel, and therefore makes it kind of a more romantic relationship. But again, they're kids, so you can take that for what it's worth. But she ultimately decides to, okay, since he's gone, I should go out and find him. And throughout the entire plot, for the most part, she is trying to find Kay. She does not know where he is, and she wants to find him. The Disney work, I think, tried to draw this kind of parallel curse that Kay has, because within the Disney version, we don't have Kay or Gerda. We have two sisters, Anna and Elsa. And Elsa's the one who ends up being cursed. And has this curse of being able to make snow, and she's really ultimately the Snow Queen within the film, unlike in this version where the Snow Queen is painted pretty much as the villain. And the thing with Elsa's powers is that that's what ultimately lets her decide to abandon, or this ultimately leads her to abandon her kingdom, abandon her family, abandon everybody, and sort of create a life of her own and create this whole magic world and palace for herself, so that she's not a bother or a burden anymore. And here it's almost like this person is a prisoner of somebody else. But Elsa's sort of a prisoner, I guess, to herself. Again, it is really emphasized in the Disney version. She doesn't go out at all. Her parents have kept her really confined because of these kinds of powers that she has, because they're afraid that those powers will really hurt somebody, because, again, she makes snow, and sometimes that snow is like, can be really sharp, and so they're just legitimately concerned for her, and they feel like the best way is just to hide her powers. Even though I would say that's bad parenting, but you can take that for what it's worth. But ultimately, it seems like the curse is treated here as kind of like an X-Men scenario where nobody understands her, and we have that kind of formula play out. But within this version, it's really played out as really like, I would say something similar to like Prince Eric when he's being hypnotized, in the same way here with Kay. He's kind of drawn to the Snow Queen only because of the curse that she put upon him. So you can kind of take that for what it's worth. So it's really adding in another dimension, another character to the original work, whereas with Elsa, it's just herself. And her problem and her struggle that she has to deal with. Instead of being manipulated and controlled by somebody else, she sort of has a lack of control of herself, and it's not because of somebody else. So it's just ultimately her powers, and she just doesn't know how to use them. So that's the only thing. That's one of the things that I feel that Disney tried to kind of draw from, at least. So basically, in order to go on this journey, Gerda gets a little boat and starts traveling along the river. I don't know why she suddenly feels that that's the best way to go, but I guess so. And basically, on the way, she meets an old lady who takes her to shore, and this lady ends up having these flowers. And I guess in this world, flowers can talk and animals can talk. In Frozen, that's sort of similar with the reindeer. The reindeer can talk, or actually no, I actually don't think the reindeer talks. I think Kristoff does that for the reindeer, actually. But there's a snowman that talks. There's no snowman in the original work. But so it is kind of a different world that Disney tried to set up, at least from tradition. So she kind of goes around asking the flowers, "Where's Kay? Where can I find him?" And then basically they just go off on some random story and don't really give her any answers. So that goes on for a while. And then after that, she's just kind of like, "Oh, okay, screw this. I'm gonna just keep walking." And it's kind of, I guess, turning autumn at some point. At least that's what the story is saying. And then basically she runs into this crow, and this crow claims to say, "Yeah, I know where Kay is." And then she's all excited, and he basically tells her, "Yeah, he's in the princess's kingdom. I saw him come." And ultimately that person doesn't end up being Kay. It actually ends up being a prince, because there's a prince and a princess. So they're all like, "Oh, I'm sorry that you can't find who you're looking for, but how about we give you some supplies so that you can go on your merry way?" And that's kind of what Gerda asks, and that's kind of what they end up giving her. And then after that, she comes across some robbers who basically rob her and kind of capture her. And as she's being captured, there's this wood pigeon that comes and tells her that Kay went with the Snow Queen to Lapland. because they apparently, I guess, witnessed it. They witnessed him going with her, and that's what they basically tell her. And and the robber, there's like it's kind of like a robber family. There's like this woman, and then there's the girl child, and the girl robber, she is a little weird, I'm not gonna lie, but she ultimately is like, yeah, okay, I'll let you go. Here's a reindeer. Go and find who you need to find. And then I guess she also gives her some boots and mittens too. And then the reindeer and Gerda stop at this little hut, and then there's this woman who says, yeah, she's probably not, the Snow Queen's in Finland, so you gotta go another, you gotta go, I don't know how many miles it was, but it was like a lot of miles. She's like, yeah, gotta keep moving, treading along, and she's not here. And she kind of says, there's this woman in Finland who can help you. Here's a fish with some writing on it. And just present that to her, and yeah, that's kind of what that woman says. And then the Finland woman ultimately says that Kay likes his condition because, again, he has this curse. Maybe sort of similar to Elsa in the fact that she likes to be alone and be isolated because of the powers that she has. It's probably a similar scenario with Kay here, but again, he has the influence of somebody else. He has the Snow Queen there. So the Finland woman basically says that the only way you're going to get him to not want to leave is to sort of break this curse. Because he's basically under the Snow Queen's power control. And then finally, Gerda reaches the castle, and this is again a really weird fairy tale logic territory here, where she basically finds Kay, goes up and basically like hugs him, and then weeps hot tears that sort of go through inside his sort of chest, and then that washes away the glass that's within his heart. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think, because it didn't say anything about his eye, but I'm assuming that since it's probably the heart that's ultimately controlling his decision making, that it makes sense that once that subsides away, so does the one that's in his eye. But again, it's really not, I think, all that well explained. At least from the research that I could find, it really wasn't all that well explained. But basically, after that, that's what really ultimately breaks the curse and ultimately ends his controls, or ends the control that the Queen has on him. In the Disney version, this kind of curse scenario plays out a little differently, and Elsa is cursed, but not only does she get cursed, but Anna tries to go after her, sort of similar to Gerda throughout this entire book, or entire story. And that's really what the plot drives around, and again, that's why I was saying they kind of follow a similar plot. She tries to go after her sister, and ultimately she ends up getting cursed herself. And ultimately, an act of true love, again, Disney logic, will lead her to have the curse broken. And basically, this scenario sort of plays out in a different way. Ultimately, Anna, who ends up getting cursed as well, breaks the curse by sort of sacrificing herself for her sister. There is this one villain within the plot who tries to ultimately destroy Elsa, and he basically attempts to, but Anna tries to get in the way of things, and ultimately it's sort of a self-sacrifice, and then this breaks the curse ultimately because it was an act of true love onto her sister, Elsa. So that's how that scenario plays out. Really different than this one. Really different. And not only is it emphasized that Anna goes on this journey alone, she also goes with a man she encounters named Kristoff, and with a reindeer and Olaf. So they sort of go on this mission together. Gerda is pretty much on her own. She just goes from one place to the next, and then she finally ends up leading to her destination. There's no other really real characters that really go with her on this journey. It's almost like she goes and makes various pit stops, and then there's one character that comes up and then leaves, and then one character that comes up and leaves. So there's really not a whole lot of development, at least I think, compared to the Disney version, where I feel there's a lot more emphasis on the characters. Like, the only thing that you can take away from Kay and Gerda's characters is the fact that they're innocent children. That's really the only characteristics they have. Unlike Anna, who is more free-spirited, and Elsa, who's more reserved. Again, there's more characteristics, I think, to the Disney version as far as characters are concerned than to the original source material. But basically, the way the source material actually ends is that they go back to the various places that Gerda was. First, they go to the woman from Finland, and she basically gives them directions on how to get home. They go back to the Lapland woman, who basically makes them clothes and makes sure that their sleigh's in order. Then they run into the girl robber, who tells them that the prince and princess are off in a foreign land, because Gerda asks, and then she asks about the crow. The crow is dead. So, she just kind of just explains things for them and says, yeah, hope to see you around, come by, whatever. But, I don't know, that girl robber was so weird. She had, like, a knife, and yeah, if you read the original tale, you'll kind of understand where I'm coming from. But she was just weird. I don't know why they even stopped where she was. But then ultimately they end up going back. And as they go back, it's emphasized that they're adults. And I don't know if this means that ultimately suddenly they changed somehow to adults, or if it just took them so long that when they finally got back they were adults. I have no clue. But that's basically how the original work ends, with them being adults, and then realizing the sort of theme I think Hans Christian Andersen was going for was like the importance of childish innocence, and and the importance of sort of pure love, and yada yada yada. And you'll see that he quotes Bible references, and yeah, he was kind of like a really Christian man, I guess you could say. Especially when he watched my Little Mermaid review, where he kind of goes into the whole deal with like God and stuff. So, and death and yada yada. So he likes to put in this religious symbolism, but I don't think it's so preachy. At least in this tale, I don't think it's that preachy compared to like Little Mermaid, where he is kind of shoving it down your throat, like, yeah, you must suffer, and yada yada, and I really did not care for that aspect in the original work. But I do like this story, I think, actually a lot better, even though it is a little odd at times, and it doesn't really feel logical at all. But with the Disney work, what I can say is that ultimately there's, in looking at it through comparing it to the original work, it seems like the Disney work wanted to create this kind of innocent sort of story too. But again, the characters are a little bit more adult, they're a little bit more developed. There are a lot of different characters. Again, Olaf, a snowman, not in the original work. Kristoff's not there. The names of the people are different. And I don't really know what Disney was trying to say, if ultimately Elsa was supposed to really be like the representation of Kay, or if he was supposed to be a representation of the Snow Queen. But I guess what Disney cleverly does is it sort of combines the two into one person. You know, having this person that's misunderstood and has this kind of curse on them, and then sort of going away in isolation and having this palace and such. So I guess that comparison can be made, and I think that's what Disney was trying to pull from the original work. But at least from what I can tell, the Disney version doesn't have like flowers that talk, or really animals that talk, actually. I'm trying to remember. But really, ultimately, how the Disney work kind of ends is with this idea of sisterly love, and the importance of family and such, and things that we've seen all in Disney's past. I think the original work was just more going for the innocence aspect, and how, you know, if you maintain that innocent heart, ultimately things will turn out for the better for you. I think that's really what Hans was really trying to say. But it feels like the Disney work's trying to say that, you know, that loving your family is important, and going out and doing risks for them is important. I guess at one point the original work does say that Gerda and Kay have this brother/sister kind of relationship, but I mean, it just feels a little bit odd when you have, you know, your sister constantly giving you kisses and, like, you know, just I don't know, it didn't really come off as like the way that I would approach my brother. Like, it just comes off as a little bit, it just doesn't really come off to me as a brother-sister relationship. With Anna and Elsa, you can clearly tell it is a sister-sister relationship. It is clearly defined. I feel like the original work doesn't really define Kay and Gerda's relationship. Oh yeah, they love each other like brother and sister. Okay, they're not even related. Well, what does that mean? You know, like, I mean, it just weirded me out for a bit, and I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand their relationship. But with Anna and Elsa's, from my research, I could tell that, yeah, this is clearly defined here. And ultimately, that's what sort of breaks the curse. And I think Disney was more focusing in on family, whereas Hans Christian Andersen is focusing on just innocence and maintaining innocence and such. So I guess you could probably say that's the difference in themes. But really, that's pretty much it. There's no other way that I can describe this original work to the Disney work, because it is so loosely based. Like, from what I've explained to you, it's so different. Like, characters completely different, story completely different, the world they create's completely different. It's really probably the most loosely based out of everything that I've done, and I thought Hunchback would be really loosely based, and they even said loosely based, but I still found way more comparisons than I could find with this work. But I think there are just some elements there that Disney was trying to pull from. It's just that they create a completely different world with it, completely different characters, and create kind of a different scenario with a similar kind of plot element of somebody going on a journey to find somebody else and sort of redeem them back to their normal state. So that's really the major comparison. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. I'm going to see if I can try to find another Disney film, regardless if it's animation or live action and such, and see if I can find the original source material to work from for next week's video. But I might be limited. I'm not sure if I could find something. I'm sure I could. I've tried to research what's her name? Something Travers, like the author of Mary Poppins. And apparently that one's really interesting because she really didn't like the Disney version of her work. But the problem is I've been having trouble finding research on it, on the book itself, and what the real source material was trying to say, and I don't know. So, we'll have to see, but I hope to find something, because I am at the end. I am at the current time of where Disney is right now. So I can't really go into any further films because no other films have come out yet. But I will try to see if I can find something and hopefully share it with you all, but we'll have to see. And I will be sure to let you know next Friday. But since next Friday I will be gone, I will be sure to post all of the videos that I've made, and I will try to, again next week, kind of give sort of a wrap up and sort of explain what's to expect and all that jazz. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. Until next time, everybody.